Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It had been such a promising start to the week, hadn't it? A routine victory against Villa, seemed to be back in the old groove. A brilliant night on Tuesday against Real Madrid, Anfield under the lights. And then it came crashing down yesterday, didn't it, in all honesty, where there's a million and one things to talk about and analyse. And I'm joined as ever by the renowned and the respected David Lynch. And David, I'm going to throw you a bit of a musical one to start with, because I know you like to play a guitar and do different bits. So, Simon and Garfunkel, number one from 1964, The Sound of Silence, the opening four words from that.
Yeah. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Yeah, it's I just feel a little bit like that, doesn't it? Very, very sort of negative feeling after the week. You know, like you say, the build up to it was positive and good, yeah. and kind of felt like Liverpool were getting somewhere, but then kind of all the old failings exposed, really. And City's a tough game, but it was just such a bad performance. I think, came into it, and I kind of said in the video I'd done previewing the game that you can go to City and lose anyway. But it was the nature of it was so kind of depressing, really, that no real positives at all to take from any individuals, a collective performance, anything you could take forward and say it's going to be a positive in the coming game. So it was really, really bad.
Yeah, there really is minimal positives, if any, to take from this one. And before we talk about sort of the halves and things that we build up as normal, I did just want to play this for everyone. So Arne Slot was quite honest afterwards about the performance and the tactical element, which we'll talk about.
But it's also easy for players to win their duels if the game plan, if the tactics are working. But we struggled now a lot with them bringing so much players into the center of the pitch, and it was difficult for some of our players then to make the right decision. So I would first and foremost and always look to the game plan and of us and them, and not blame my players at all, because in the second half, when we were doing better, I think you could also see that they were able to win much more duels, and then we were more than a few times able to win the ball.
I mean, he mentions that word a couple of times there, game plan. But in this one, is it fair to say Arne Slot got completely outgunned by Pep Guardiola?
Yeah, I mean, he admits it there, to be honest. And I think fair enough, by the way, because I think, it could be easy to kind of throw your players under the bus a little bit. And I think he defends them there, which is what you kind of want to see from your manager. But he got outdone. And I think there's a thing about this. I'm kind of worried about how we cover this, and got to be careful, by the way, of kind of people taking that as well. That means that Arne Slot is rubbish then. But Arne Slot outmanaged Pep Guardiola twice last season. So, and I mean, completely did a job on them in the away game last season, where Liverpool were massively impressive, as impressive as City had been there. And to do it on their own patch is very, very difficult. But I think he would accept, and he accepts there, that obviously they weren't at that level in this game, and the tactics they struggled to deal with, and he didn't give the players the game plan to succeed in the game. And I think that's what we saw, because I think a lot of the criticisms really the performance, and it's like effort or energy or all these kind of things. I just think tactics wise, I think they were just a million miles off it. And if you do that, you can always look a step short in the press. You're always kind of chasing shadows. And when that happens, it looks like you're not kind of trying or whatever. Or the energies or the legs are not there. I do think Liverpool still have a problem with physicality, but I think yesterday was a lot more about the fact that City were, as he said, putting so many in the middle to get kind of short, sharp exchanges around him, and he just couldn't deal with that at any point. He kind of got better at it in the second half, but it really was it was a problem all the way through, and yeah, just not a very good performance on that basis, and the manager's clearly happy to take some of the blame for that.
And you're right. What we saw yesterday, we didn't see a press. There was no real aggression. Like you say, City stuck men in the middle, Doku and Foden coming in quite often. We just couldn't seem to handle it. And even then, when he talks about the second half and we saw better, you've got to do it at 0-0. At 2-0, we've talked about garbage time and managing the game. City were almost comfortable at 2-0 to say, well, you're not really doing anything, so go on, have the ball a bit.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it was very similar to when Liverpool go 2-0 up in the game last season, really, and that City had a lot of the ball, didn't they? And they got into areas after that, but they never looked like scoring, and Liverpool didn't look like scoring or creating any real threat. So I just thought they were mad. What is that comment there, by the way? You're sugarcoating it. I'm absolutely hammering them here. Like,
yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? God, we need to talk about this in a bit, by the way, is people's reaction to these things. But yeah, I just thought City had them at arm's length once he got to 2-0. I think you were exactly right about that. So as much as Liverpool improved, it's very much kind of a game state thing of City saying, well, we will just kind of manage it from here. And they very much did, really.
Who would have thought that on a Monday, abysmal, outgunned, and lack of tactics will be classed as sugarcoating it? But here we are with the fan base. No way everything is at the moment. So, yeah, there's still so much to talk about. I'm going to put a picture on the screen, and you're going to know exactly the incident that I'm talking about. And you probably saw Dermot Gallagher's explanation of it this morning. Now, I'm still struggling with this. I watched it again. I've heard the explanation. I've read up on the law because you're always thinking, like, people misinterpret things. But the decision to disallow that Virgil van Dijk header, I'm still struggling with it as we speak here right now.
Yeah, I mean, I try and always approach it from a thing of like, how has the referee ended up in that situation where they think that is the right decision? I think everybody, I saw so many City fans say, it's just not right, is it? So common sense dictates that it really is the wrong decision. If City fans are coming out and saying that's the case, then it's clearly just a really poor one, really, that anybody who's kind of got a sense of how football should be would not really be happy with it. Where I kind of feel for them a little bit in the refs is that the rules around it are so confusing, and so it's just not kind of cut and dry, is it, in terms of how they're supposed to judge this. So, the problem is that Robertson, he's near the goalkeeper. He does a thing, which is, I know people are saying, well, he ducks out the way of the ball, but that is an action of sorts. And, if he's a little closer to the keeper and he does a duck, the keeper might be thinking he might get on it. I mean, the fact is he's going to get nowhere near it anyway.
Yeah.
But I can see why the refs ended up there in terms of, well, he's close. He does something. He doesn't just stand there. And maybe there's an obstruction there, and I can't clearly see whether he's going to get there or not, or whether that is part of the keeper's thinking and when he dives or whatever. I mean, I completely fundamentally disagree that he affected the goal and it should have been given. City fans totally agree that it should be given. But I'm guessing that is what the referee's thinking. But I mean, some clarity about how they rule on these things, maybe just a blanket. If you are offside and you within the frame of the goal, we're going to give it anyway. So, something where there's some clarity would just be better, because it's just a shambles, really, how kind of inconsistent they are on this one. And as is pointed out in the comment there, it's kind of the one at Wolves that City get is very kind of similar. I guess the ball is lower against Liverpool, so maybe that doesn't help Liverpool, that the ball is kind of a little closer to Robertson than it is to Bernardo Silva. Again, like I say, I'm just trying to kind of find somewhere in my head to kind of make it make sense, but it doesn't really. And it just is so annoying, because I think, as bad as Liverpool have been at times this season, I really do think they're having one of those seasons where things are just not going for them as well. And it's I think they had a season last season where they were very good and things went for them, and now they're kind of the other side of that, and some of the tight calls are not going their way. So it's just, incredibly frustrating, really.
Yeah, especially the way it's going. We need every ounce of luck we can get. And people, you're right, because people will look at the Bernardo goal, the one for City got at Wolves. People even think back to that Atletico, was it the first goal or the second goal, when the player's clearly in the way of Alisson, but that's given and played on as well. But I was annoyed about it, but I'll be honest, watching the context of the game, my anger just dissipated, because we were pretty shy, weren't we? It wouldn't have really I wouldn't be confident to say, I know it can be different, it's 1-1, but we didn't do enough to earn anything regardless of this.
This is exactly it. This is why I don't feel like I don't even think I kind of touched on it briefly in my post-match talking about the game, but it was such a footnote in the end. Exactly as is said there, is that, people say, well, how can you not say that that's a crucial moment that changes the complexion of the game? Well, it could have changed the complexion of the game, is what we're saying, because the complexion of the game needed changing, because Liverpool were terrible up to that point. So, all you can say is that it could have changed things. Not that it did change things, because Liverpool were awful up to that point. So, what they would have hoped for and prayed for is that it did change things, because they just hadn't been anywhere near good enough. And the fact is, the reaction to that not being given then is to just not be good again. So all the evidence we've got is that Liverpool's tactics, setup, whatever the players were doing in that moment, was not good enough to get them anywhere near a result. And so I think anybody moaning about this or latching onto it, you can moan about it in terms of it's a bad refereeing decision and one you disagree with. But anyone saying it was such a crucial moment in the game, I just disagree with that wholeheartedly. I thought Liverpool were awful and they got what they deserved in the end. Maybe it could have been 3-1 if it, with a bit more fairness, but so what? They still would have got deservedly beaten, and they got deservedly beaten in the end anyway.
Yeah, it was just a footnote. There's no point hiding from it at all. And I suppose in terms of the performance, people are going to look for the positives. Is there anything we can sort of hang our hat on? And this is a difficult thing, because when we talk about pass marks for players, I mean, you can see Jamie Carragher went right after Konate after this game as well, saying when he conceded, he's at the heart of it. Is there anyone that got pass marks from yesterday? We're probably talking 2 or 3 tops, aren't we?
To be honest, I didn't even do individual performances in kind of post-match stuff, because who played well? I actually kind of thought, bizarrely, and I know loads will disagree with this, actually, I actually don't think Conor Bradley did too badly, and I know Jeremy Doku was City's main threat, but I actually think in terms of, it wasn't like he was the one who was constantly getting walked past a lot of the time. It was other players, and around the goal, it's Konate, and I actually think Conor Bradley stuck to that task pretty decently. But, I mean, God, the bar was so low. I really didn't think anybody played well, to be honest. Mamadashvili saves a pen, but it's a soft pen, but he gives it away by being clumsy. So, no real redemption there. Honestly, I don't know who played well. I didn't think anybody did.
Yeah, he'd probably be giving someone a 6 at best. It's fair for Bradley, though, because Pep even said afterwards, and people say as a backhanded compliment, but he did well. Did you not think as well in Conor Bradley's defence? I wouldn't have minded if Conor Bradley at times, because you could see it, had just gone mental at Salah and Gravenberch saying, does anyone want to help me out against this guy on this side? Like, it just seems so weird that in the last few, we've seen the shape, the compactness, even Salah defending a lot, as we saw against Real Madrid, but there was none of that in this one.
That to me, though, the fact that it was so marked, really, of kind of them not seemingly making the effort, just, I always think when it gets to that point, something tactically is going terribly wrong at that point, really. So, the way that they were getting so many numbers in the middle and getting those little exchanges between themselves. And then once they were firing the ball out of there and they dragged kind of 4 or 5 Liverpool players in, every time Jeremy Doku is 1v1 on that side. And it's kind of like, well, you've probably got to stop it at source, really, which is that being outnumbered in the middle. And once you do that, it's less easy for them to create one-on-ones on that side, which was obviously a massive part of the aim there. So, I just think it was kind of not a lack of effort or lack of intensity or any of that, really. I just, because I think especially with the intensity as well, they'd had 24 hours extra to City in terms of recovery from the Champions League game, and they put a lot into that. But that's a decent recovery time for this Liverpool side, massively. I just think it was the tactics. If you are getting outnumbered in certain areas of the pitch, you always look like you can't get to the press. You always look like you're short because the ball's getting moved around you and you don't know who to press, or you're creating confusion. And Guardiola talked about it post-match about how they kind of did it, and I thought that was kind of what it was, really, and that was the massive issue. And the one who kind of suffered the most from that was Bradley being constantly put in these positions where he's having to deal with Doku, and he did quite a lot of the time, but sometimes wasn't completely able to. But it's I just think it all kind of for me fed into the just to getting the tactics wrong again, really, and City having a better plan that definitely came off.
It came off across the board for them. And we're talking about Arne Slot, and obviously people have got reactions and thoughts on that. I mean, you're right, you got outgunned in this one. There's no two ways about it at all. People, if we're honest, they were quite happy to see the same lineup as the Real Madrid game, thinking, yeah, same into this and different bits. But he'd almost talked about against Real Madrid, it was either going to be a low block or a high press. There would be no in between. This one, I don't know what, like you say, tactics a bit. We seem so passive and almost happy to get a draw in a way. Surely that felt like an element of the tactics. We're like, what's going on here? Why aren't we doing either or, as he talked about?
Yeah, I don't understand why they kind of were in a mid block for so much of this, because that, again, it just did give City the space in behind them and kind of made it easier for them, because how many times did they get through? And then they did have spaces in behind to kind of hit. You know, you were always kind of worried about that, and he created disorganization. So I don't know why they didn't do it exactly the same as they did against Real Madrid, because that really worked, and City have just as many threats that they want to get in behind. Maybe he's a little bit worried that if you get pinned into a low block against City, they are also quite expert at kind of firing those ones in behind for cutbacks. So maybe that was his concern, and it's so easy to say with hindsight, but whatever he did, it just didn't work, did it? Because City were completely dominant in the game. So, and Slot himself admitted he got it wrong, so he did.
Yeah, no press. That mid-block was a disaster. And then at half-time, was there a bit of you thinking, like, I was thinking he's got to make changes, because that was probably, a shout for the worst 45. And again, you're thinking where he maybe helps himself. No changes, didn't really seem to tweak much. I could say that they pressed a bit higher, but there was people who were lucky to be coming out for the second half, in all honesty. And surely, like, Curtis Jones is smashing his door down this morning.
Yeah, but again, I wonder it's because he's just thinking, well, I haven't given them players the platform to perform because I haven't given them the right tactics. So, and the fact is, who would you have changed at half time? Because you could have just changed a lot of them. I honestly just didn't think anybody was playing well. So it probably wasn't even one for subs. It was more kind of, I've just got this completely wrong. I mean, maybe one of your subs would be one that, changes the tactics in some way in terms of just clogging that midfield or doing something there. But obviously he didn't go down that route. But that, you could have made a case for that. But obviously, he didn't eventually do that. And like you said, it's so hard to judge whether the information he gave them at half time did make Liverpool slightly better, or it was just a game state thing. That is kind of hard to pick out. I still lean on the side of the game state, but maybe Slots thinks he saw things that were tactically improved. But I find that really hard to judge, to be honest. And it's a really tough one.
It is tough, and maybe what's tougher with this one, because, Christ, we've lost games, we've reviewed enough losses recently, that's bad enough. But this one, you think of ones we've lost, because people will say Brentford was pretty abject, but we scored a few goals, we had shots on target. In this one, not only were we getting outgunned, they let us have the ball second half. We didn't get a shot on target, I think, till the 74th minute, and that was a Szoboszlai long ranger. That probably felt like a bit of a low, the way it all played out until then, didn't it?
Yeah, I think kind of worse than Brentford, because the Brentford thing was like, okay, Liverpool have got this one specific issue of kind of physicality and winning second balls, and you're coming up against the Brentford side, and you sound like sour grapes to hammer it, but it really is. And I've watched Brentford since. Like, it's dread. It's not football, really, is it? It's just like a different sport that they're playing, and so you can kind of just say, well, okay, that was annoying. Brentford got a couple of breaks with how some of the long balls fell and those kind of things. You just write it off and move on. But the thing is with the City game is that it was a football match, and Liverpool were very good at those last season, and now suddenly they're not. And they went and dominated City last time, and they weren't even close to doing that this time around. So it was just incredibly disappointing, really. So, and as you say, not getting a shot on target till the 74th minute, ending that run of scoring in consecutive league games as well. Very disappointing, and just the fact that the defeat was a fully deserved one, really. And it's kind of funny as well, because there are aspects where you say there's kind of a little bit of misfortune in there as well. I think all the kind of goals that they score are from kind of 0.08 expected goals chances and the disallowed goal. But I often think that you have these hard luck stories when you're just not a very good team who's not able to overcome those bits of adversity and conceding a great goal, or getting a goal chalked off that you feel should have stood. The basics of it is that the performance level was just so poor that you can't even get into that as kind of poor luck, or there's just too many of those that have happened throughout the season, really, for it to be anything other than the fact that the performance level is just not good enough.
Just wasn't good enough in every aspect yesterday. And I mean, as we talk about off the field bits that we always do as well, I'm sure you've seen this tweet from Tactical Times and people referencing it now. Liverpool, since they exited against PSG last season, have now lost 40% of their games in all competitions. I mean, we talk about patterns. That's pretty alarming, isn't it, when you lay it bare like that?
It is, but I think we have got to apply the context here, haven't we? We've got to kind of be fair. I mean, I'm pretty sure Guardiola had a run last season where you would have said he's lost X% of his last few games, and over a long period, by the way, a long period. And we're talking about one of the greatest coaches we've ever seen in the game. The fact is, Liverpool they clocked off the back end of last season, so those last 4 games, I do not count them at all, quite frankly. And I know people will say, well, it's indicative of a trend, but we have to be honest about what we saw in those games. He was starting, the players were on holiday, they were barely training. He was starting players who he'd barely started all season. It wasn't the real kind of Liverpool. So we can't really include those games in them. I don't think I'm being over the top in terms of defending them to say that we're not including those in the run. So that muddies the statistics massively for me. And what we've also got to kind of talk about as well, and we will probably come on to this a little bit more, is that we probably should have accepted that the start of this season wasn't going to be very good because of the nature of what went on over the summer. And I'm getting tired of seeing kind of, well, I'm jumping ahead here a little bit in the agenda, but I have people kind of saying, well, he won the league with this team and then spent X amount of money and it's made it worse. And that is true, but we have got to stop talking, I think, about the money spent as a positive. I don't think it was a positive in terms of, I don't think spending a lot of money in one summer is ever a good thing for you, because I always think in the short term, at least, that is going to cause you pain. And I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. So I can happily take out those games at the end of last season, and I can say there has been huge mitigation at the start of this one in terms of players adapting and those sorts of things, and injuries as well, and kind of, but mostly just the players adapting, because there's so many players who are new signings at the moment who just are not touching anywhere near the level that Liverpool need them to. And for me, that's huge mitigation in this opening period. And people don't want to accept that. They want to say you should spend 450 million in the summer, which, by the way, they recouped like half of it by selling important players. So again, but you should spend that amount of money and it should make you immediately better. I don't agree. And we talked, and this is not hindsight, we talked time and time again over the summer about, and we kept bringing it up, slight concerns about turnover and what that does to you. That's the big worry that we had. And it's here, it's happening now. So we just shouldn't be surprised by that at all. And as I say, I don't think the spending should be used as a stick to beat them with, because the spending is done with the next 3 or 4 seasons in mind, not being instantly brilliant in this one. And the fact is that spend has made Liverpool worse in the short term, and we kind of probably have to accept that. And I know a lot of people don't want to, but I think we do have to accept that spend it's not helped them in any way, and it's made the start of this season really difficult. And then you add that into the back end of last season being what it was, a big party, then you can throw out suggestions that, they've lost 40% of the last few games. Then, okay, fair enough. If people want to use that to make a case to sack the manager, that's fair enough, and opinions are all different. But for me, I think there's too much muddiness in those statistics to take that at face value.
Is it mad, though, and we're still saying this again and again, but the evidence or what you're seeing in front of your eyes just keeps backing it up. 450 million spent. the only way looking out of this now, I still think, and I'll be honest, there's things we could do in adjustments, and you've got to get Isaac fit and all that. But you are going to have to buy in physicality at some point. That is what this team is massively missing more than anything. So 450 million spent, and I know, like you say, they've recouped it. They haven't got it in the squad. They're going to have to bring it in at some point, aren't they?
Well, the huge question here is whether they are that bothered about this, by the way. So whether they think that when everybody's fit and firing that they can be so good at football that they can the physicality is not going to matter. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think anybody does yet. Maybe not. But what we've got to kind of acknowledge, I think, we've probably got to let them have time to work out whether that's going to be the case. And we probably can't judge it right now, can we? Because look at this. We're in November already. Alexander Isak has got a handful of appearances and 1 goal in the League Cup. Now, he was supposed to be better than Nunes. At the moment, he's worse because he's not getting on the pitch and he's not doing anything. So there's no improvement there. It's made the squad worse. Milos Kerkez has come in. He's not adapted. He's still very young, by the way. He's younger than Conor Bradley. He's still a kid. I don't believe that this is his baseline performance level for the rest of his Liverpool career. But at the moment, he is demonstrably worse than Andy Robertson because he is on the bench. And Andy Robertson, I thought it was overplayed last season, but he was one of the weaker areas of the team that you felt that you could upgrade. And then you look at other signings. I think Ekitike, yes, has hit the ground, but he's one of the only ones that has. Mamardashvili has done okay, but he's a backup goalkeeper, so he's not going to kind of move the dial for you. And Florian Wirtz, kind of the jewel in the crown, probably, I know not the most big money signing of the two, but the one that you felt was probably going to have the most influence on this team is just not playing very well at the moment. Now, again, you could say, I think he's going to be like this for the rest of his career, and Liverpool have bought a really poor player who can't do it in the Premier League. That's fair enough if people have that opinion, but I still think there's probably more to come from him. But at the moment, again, he's come in, he's made that midfield worse. Or if he's played in the left wing position, he's not as good as Luis Diaz was last season. So these are 3 areas of the team that Liverpool have, in the short term at the very least, have made worse than they were last season. And therefore the performances of the team are worse than last season. So we probably shouldn't be surprised by that fact. We're disappointed that the signings haven't adapted yet and haven't adapted immediately, and maybe criticism that some of them haven't hit the ground running because that, although some Liverpool signings in the past, Fabinho, Robertson, Firmino have taken a little bit of time, there's also been Salah, Mane, Alisson, Van Dijk who've hit the ground running. And I think there's only Ekitike you could say has done that of this group of signings. So I think, criticism for that maybe, of not getting players that could hit the ground running. But I'm not quite at a stage personally where I'm like, all these players are terrible and the business was absolutely awful. I just think at the moment, yes, it is, because they're not doing what the players who came before them did. And that will be what they're judged on ultimately.
Well, they need to work it out quickly. And I suppose in terms of that, because recruitment, and we mentioned it before, like recruitment, maybe you've got to look at that. We don't know how the powers that be see it. As you say, maybe when everyone's fit, they think, they can get around that physicality element. But we're also talking about Arne Slot's tactics as well. Is it, everyone wants to simplify it and go, it's the tactics, it's the recruitment. Is it probably just a bit of everything right now?
Yeah, exactly that. I think it's all of that. I think it's the recruitment has made the team worse. I think tactically there have been games where Arne Slot has not been at his best, and that. But equally, it's very hard to get the tactics spot on every time when your players aren't doing the jobs that you need them to. Because, for example, Wirtz is getting absolutely bullied out there. When he's capable of so much more. When Isak's not even touching the pitch because he's not fit. When Kerkez is turning up and looking like he's struggling in certain aspects of adapting. So it's hard to then consistently put out a team that's going to pull off all your tactics. But I do think it's a combination of that. I'd also mention, I do think the injuries have been disruptive to certain players. We've only seen the best of McAllister over the last couple of games prior to this, and he'd been pretty terrible prior to that. And he's one of the most important players in the team. Conor Bradley had been really hurt, I think, by the injury in pre-season. And then also, I actually think Liverpool have had a tough start fixture-wise as well on paper. They had a really gentle start to the season last time, and it allowed them to build momentum. It's been the opposite this time. And so they've kind of just completely stuttered. So you throw it all in together, and of course, and I don't just mention this. I want to mention it from time to time because I don't want us to forget it. But the Jota situation, what that meant for the players coming into a dressing room like that, what it meant for the players who were already there, who were grieving the friend. You just throw all these difficulties together and the turnover and everything, and you can kind of see why there've been a lot of issues, unfortunately. So, the job is to kind of just make sure now that you just come out of that period and you gel the players and you lay the foundations and you set the foundations for the next 3 or 4 years with this group of players and maybe have a think about what do we need to add as well. Do we just need to add a sprinkling of physicality in certain positions? And you don't have to have a team of groks, by the way. You just, if you get it right and you add it in the right positions, it can really, really help you out and can provide platforms for others. So you've got to have a think about that as well. But that for me is kind of the aims for the season now, really, is to bed everyone in and to start seeing better football as the season progresses. Because, well, the title is gone now. I think we can all kind of accept that. But yeah, so there's a new task at hand now, and it's improving on a lot of other aspects.
And there is a lot to improve on when we look at it. And I thought this was a great tweet. I wanted to ask you about it from your colleague Beth Lindop, saying tactical issues, but the first time in 13 years Liverpool have lost 4 Premier League games away in a row. Does feel a bit like a mentality issue. Players not up for the fight when they come under pressure, both physical and psychologically, away from home. I mean, I tweeted, I got a lot of stick, but I stand by this. I think especially we've seen it this season. I don't like using this word, but it's the truth. I think we look a bit weak, a bit fragile away from home, especially this year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think confidence is definitely a part of that. You kind of try and avoid talking about the intangibles too much, because obviously a lot of the problems are quite concrete and obvious what they are. But I also think when you are losing games more consistently, then you are going to have more problems in terms of how you're feeling about yourselves, and when you do suffer a setback, how you feel about that and where you're up to with it. So, I think that's kind of important to, that is clearly what's happening, because the away record recently, I mean, what is it? Lost 5, won 3 away from home this season. 2 of those with the last kick of the game that they won as well. So they just haven't been good away from home, and football is harder away from home. And I think, part of it is what we have talked about with the physicality and the ability to kind of earn the right to play away from home, and that would makes it easier then to be mentally stronger, because then you feel like, okay, we're getting peppered, but we're absolutely fine here. So I think that's all part of it. And it's just one of those things, when you are a great football team, you win a lot away from home, and you are a not so great football team, which Liverpool, that's exactly what they are at the moment. You find it harder to pick up results at home, away from home, and so that's what we're seeing at the moment.
We're seeing it repeat. And again, things we're just saying again. How many times have we talked about Jules on this show? And again, 31 out of 79. It just said it all, that stat, didn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, it's kind of what I find most frustrating about this, I think, is that the manager talks about Jules all the time. So he knows it's an issue. Like, why didn't you kind of pack out your team with dual winners, or did you want to just sort of say we're going to out football teams? You want to just turn it into duels? And the thing is, by the way, duels as a measurement has also got dribbles in there, so they're an attacking measurement and a defensive measurement. And if you have really good dribblers who win those battles, then you are going to win duels. And but what I like about it is it kind of just says who won their battles on the pitch. And if you win your battles, you tend to kind of win football matches. So that's why I find it really instructive, really. And it's just indicative of a Liverpool side that is not winning the battles at the moment. And so, you've got to do that in away games in particular to earn the right to play your football. And that's something that's fallen way short recently.
Yeah, second balls and duels is just the story of the season so far. And trying to bring some positives into the mix. Off the pitch, contract-wise, does sound like things are progressing with potential contract renewals for Gravenberch and Szoboszlai.
Yeah, sounds pretty good at the moment. I mean, kind of was in touch around Gravenberch a few weeks ago. It didn't seem like massive progress had been made there, but obviously maybe they're at the point now in the year where they do start to talk about it. It would make sense for this to be the time, really. And, as much as kind of things feel awful at the moment, I think tying down players like that for the long term and keeping stability, because, we're talking about turnover and what that's done to Liverpool. Liverpool need to lock in a lot of these players now for the next few years and make sure they can have a very, very stable team, because I think that's the way you go about winning trophies consistently. So, sounds like good news. Sobersline particularly has been absolutely unbelievable this season, hasn't he? So, will be great to be able to get him tied down. And of course, Gravenberch as well. I think he's got even more levels to go to as well. So, really important. And Liverpool need that stability, and they need to get ahead of these contract situations, because we've seen in recent seasons the kind of chaos that can cause.
Yeah, we can't be ended up in situations like we are right now, and maybe knocking on to the summer, we'll have to see. But I suppose for this part, international breaks, I don't even know how to put this, but is this a good international break with what happened yesterday? Because obviously we were talking a bit different, or it felt it could be different after Real Madrid, but is it a good one now?
I don't know. It'll feel kind of negative because of all the comments and the stuff on social media we'll be seeing. But I think for the players, maybe to just get away and just have a reset. And to be fair, talk about a reset though, they've got to as well think that they've got to take confidence from some of what they did this week as well. Let's not erase the Aston Villa and the Real Madrid performances, and let's also acknowledge that it was City away. In terms of difficult away games they've got left now, I think, Arsenal will rival that. But outside of that, that's probably one of the hardest you're ever going to play in a season. So if nothing else, even if the performance was atrocious, at least, you can say that it's out of the way now. It's done, so you don't have to go there again. So that's a kind of good thing to say about it. And you got to kind of look ahead to what's to come as well, and that looks quite inviting. So it's just a chance for them to go away. And you just really hope that no further injuries, and they can kind of go from there, really.
Fingers crossed on that as well. And we talk about it there because there has been some tough aways like Chelsea, Palace, City. That it's not been a good fixture-wise start to the season. And when you look at it there, it does seem quite favourable. It's a lot of teams all the way through to the 27th of December in the Premier League where they're in the bottom half or relegation zone even. And even the aways, you're thinking you'd probably take Leeds United at the moment in those as well. So on paper, it looks like a decent run sort of towards the end of the year now for Liverpool. But there's got to be good results, you feel, from this one, or it could get even uglier.
Yeah, they have been due a run of easier fixtures, by the way, because you've got to say, like, the start to the season and the amount of like really tricky away games that they've had, it has been a really, really difficult one. I think a more difficult start to the season than anyone kind of out of City or Arsenal even. I really do think Liverpool's fixtures have been very, very tricky. So it's nice to see a run like that coming about. But as you say, there's kind of a bit of pressure on it because you've got to make the most of it. But there are some kind of gentle home games in there that you feel that Liverpool will be able to win. They're even I know Forest are kind of turning a corner a little bit, but it's not as easy for Sean Dyche teams to come to Anfield and do what they want to do. And Liverpool are going to be stronger there. You also hope that we start to see more from Wirtz, that we start to see more of Alexander Isak and this team, and Kirkez as well, and the summer signings, because as much as we're saying, we've got to give them time and it will take time to adapt. Around the kind of turn of the year is where you want to start to see the best of them starting to shine out. They should be adapted by that point. So, they've got a little bit of leeway, but we're coming to the end of that. So this run now, 5 home games to 4 away games. Some of the games look a lot more gentle. Yeah. Let's start seeing the best version of Liverpool, really. And if not, that's when I think, if there's some defeats in there, you lose to Nottingham Forest at home, and that's when you start to really get panicky, I think, about kind of what is going on, because, Liverpool should be more than capable of winning quite a few of these games. And if they do, look, they're 8th at the moment, but they're 2 points off 3rd. I think if you get to the end of that run and you win the games that you should do, then you will be very, very comfortable about a top 4 finish. Champions League qualification won't even be in question at that point. So that's got to be the aim, really, is to try and build some momentum in this run now.
And the title's gone. I mean, you can be optimistic, but you can be, wildly on a different planet if you think we're in the title race. I suppose, is the expectation of this team that realistically they should be getting top four because of the players they've got, without doubt, and how small that gap is. But even by its nature, Liverpool have almost got the feel of a cup team this season as well, aren't they? They can batter an opponent 1 minute, but get hammered or not show up in another one. Is that it's the realistic expectation now, isn't it? Top four, maybe a cup.
Yeah, I would say so. And I mean, that kind of sounds, I had a few people on YouTube kind of on the comments kind of suggesting that, being very negative, to say that with 27 games left to go that you're writing the title off. But it was very bullish about Liverpool were going to win the title very early last season. And it was for a combination of reasons. One is that once you get to kind of a gap of 8 points, that is more than people think it is in terms of what the two sides' points per game have to be then to kind of correct that. Is the gap is vast there, and you really have to go at some pace to kind of correct that, or you need your opposition to kind of like lose 4 games on the bounce as Liverpool did. So that is a huge gap, 8 points. Even if it only sounds like you could turn it around in 3 weeks, you could, but it won't. That won't happen. So, and also it's not just that. It's like Arsenal got way better underlying numbers. Man City got way better underlying numbers. So Liverpool they're both behind in a gap that would be big even if they're playing well, and they're not playing very well, and their opponents are playing well. So you could throw those things together. It's not stupid or it's genuine analysis to say that Liverpool won't win the title this season. And I can promise anyone who doubts that, we will be right about that this season. They will not win the title. But as you say, there are things to play for to get top four. And I think not just being a top four battle, by the way, I think with the quality Liverpool have got, they should be doing that comfortably, and they should be finishing third at the very worst, really. So that has got to be the aim to do that. It's got to be the aim to kind of be ending the season absolutely flying. And then you can take that momentum into next season as well. And looking like kind of title contenders at that point. And as you say, there's opportunities in the Cups, in the FA Cup. I don't think the manager's going to completely toss that one off, if I'm honest, because, of course, the League Cup's gone and there's a chance there to maybe do something. So maybe go slightly stronger than you would have expected it, depending on kind of what the draws look like. And the Champions League as well, if Liverpool can improve as they go on, it's going to be less physical in the Champions League as well. Then they've got a chance, and if they can click at the right time. And you saw what PSG did last season. Didn't start this season particularly well, but then came to life at exactly the right time. If Liverpool can kind of do that, then there's every chance that they can make a late run on it. But of course, it's asking a lot. But there's a chance there that they can improve and kick on from there. And if they do it at the right time in the Champions League, they give themselves an opportunity. And I would say if PSG were having the troubles they did in the early part of last season, they probably wouldn't have been in a title race if they were a Premier League team. It's just that for them to be in a tough moment, they're still probably winning most of the games in Liga anyway, and the title's basically a given. So it's very disappointing that Liverpool aren't going to be in a title race. But as I say, you can't completely write off that they'll recover at the right time and finish the season strongly to put themselves in the hunt for a couple of trophies.
I love some of the optimism in the chat panel, but people, there's not a chance in hell. Simple as that. And I mean, this period coming up, Arne Slot is, he can't afford to be seen on a flight to Dubai this time, put it that way. But what's going to be the focus? Because I mean, people have got all sorts now, and I understand this, work on a defence, can you get Johnny Heitinga back, all these types of things. What do you think is going to be Arne Slot's focus for this period now?
I think just making the most of the fact that the fixture list is easier and just play, let's try and repeat the Real Madrid performance. Let's try and repeat the Aston Villa performance. Let's go back to the things that we do well and try and produce them consistently. Can we get Isak in the team in some form? That would be extremely handy because he just puts the ball in the back of the net. So I think all those kind of things really. And as you say, you probably could do without being pictured in Dubai. I know it didn't go down particularly well last time, did it? So I think that's something to maybe think about, even if he is going on holiday, maybe just keep out of the public and maybe don't be spotted out there would be helpful. And I would say about the talk about kind of Heitinga, and I've seen some question marks over Van Bronckhorst. It feels like it's kind of the thing that people do when when you suddenly become not good to kind of point it at the assistant manager. And it happened with Pep Linders, who for some bizarre reason some Liverpool fans have like taken against, because apparently the last couple of seasons of Klopp were his fault rather than Jurgen's, and all of the good things that happened when Pep Linders came back to the club, they were nothing to do with him apparently. But it just, if we have a knowledge gap about these things, sometimes it's best not to just fill it with speculation. And I think the talk about the assistant managers is always the case with that, because nobody can really know how good and how influential they are really, other than the people who are actually close to it. So I just ask people to maybe calm down with that kind of speculation, because I don't think that's right at all.
I suppose the only thing that in this break, and we've looked at this all season as well, it's the defensive patterns we're seeing, because it had looked better, and it had 2 clean sheets, and you thought they're compact, the double pit, it all seems to be working well. That got tossed out the window. I mean, you look at the current trajectory as well. I think it's about 55 goals they're on course to concede. He's got to do something about that. Surely that's got to be a focus.
Yeah, you've just got to tighten up. You've just got to look like a more compact team that is less easy to score against. And everything is kind of based from that. And we talked about last season him coming in and that being kind of his first priority really, is to make Liverpool harder to play through and harder to score against. And he did have some success in that, but we haven't seen it at the start of this season. And maybe that is relationships, individual performances, fitness, all these things. But at some point you've got to stop conceding. So, as you say, the current trajectory is really, really bad. And so that needs to be sorted ASAP, really.
And I suppose it's the final one, because they all comment in the chat panel, and it's right to ask. It's all still speculation. There's nothing really solid with January at all. Is the names like Semenyo might coming up, Gay mentioned, but there's generally nothing solid coming through at all, is there?
No, not at all. And the Semenyo stuff as well, I would be almost angry at Liverpool if you were to sign a goal-scoring winger in this window, because I think it's probably the last thing that this team needs at the moment. They need something that will help them stop conceding so many goals, to be honest. So, I've not heard anything concrete at all, and I always go into January kind of sceptical that they will do anything, to be honest.
Does feel that way, and if they don't do anything, they are going to have to sort a lot. It's not the best period at the moment. An international break, you'll have your feelings on that, but Liverpool need to improve. Maybe this run, people, might be the way forward. It's going to be an interesting run all the way through till Christmas time, isn't it? All it leaves me to say as ever is, for the time, the insight, and for answering all our questions, David, it is massively appreciated.
Thank you.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.